just again, if you could have seen the respect and the love in the room, and it's love really for the country, for our country. I don't want to say me, because you'll say, oh, he's so conceited. He's such a conceited person. But they do. I mean, they like the job I'm doing. They said, sir, we love you. These are grown people saying that. Isn't that nice? Maybe, I don't know, maybe they're trying to get to me.
If you're looking for another example of how far the United States has fallen under Donald Trump's rule, then look no further than this explosive piece in the Wall Street Journal. According to the journal, nearly 30 European leaders gathered privately, left their phones behind, and spoke openly about how to reduce dependence on the United States because Trump had made America look unreliable, erratic, and potentially dangerous. I mean, the details around this are absolutely extraordinary, right?
In one word, it would be unity. And it is unity of all 32. It was something very special happening in that room.
You get President Trump coming in, throwing hand grenades, as it were, verbally, saying, US needs to take control of Greenland. It's a big problem for us. Spain is a terrible partner, etc. And whatever is said behind closed doors, the impression that the outside world gets is that the unity isn't there.
It's a bit like in a family. You have families where you never quarrel, and then it bursts out completely. You get a sort of volcano and the whole thing is done. Or you have families like where I come from, where we love to sometimes fight each other a bit, not put it under the carpet, get the issues on the table, and then reunite because you stick together. Trump, for example, is completely committed to NATO. I know. Trump 45, I was Prime Minister, Trump 47, now as Secretary General of NATO, he is completely committed. But he has this one big issue where he's completely right, which is, hey, Mark, is it fair that we spend so much more on this whole thing than the Europeans and the Canadians? And we are now solving that. That was his big success in The Hague. We are now delivering. Since Eisenhower, this has been debated, and he is delivering. So commitment, yes, but also clear expectation.
We're talking about nearly 30 national leaders, allies of the United States, reportedly gathering at the headquarters in Brussels. It was close to midnight, no cameras, no recordings, no phones, and leaders came alone so that they could speak candidly. And the subject of the conversation was not a run-of-the-mill policy dispute. It was how to manage the rupture between NATO countries and the United States with Donald Trump at the helm. Some reportedly later compared it to a group therapy session. According to the reporting, Emmanuel Macron told the room there was, quote, no going back. The president of France was reportedly telling Europe that the dependence on the United States had become a security risk. That is how far Donald Trump has dragged America from our allies. And the immediate trigger was Trump's threat involving Greenland.
On Greenland, do you have confidence that the negotiations will play out, or do you think the U.S. will have to annex Greenland ultimately?
With respect to what?
Greenland.
Well, that's what hurt my relationship with NATO, because Greenland doesn't help Denmark. Denmark doesn't spend money to really help Greenland, but it's an important part for the United States. And it's surrounded by China ships and Russian ships. And that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It was Greenland that, and it continues to be, that should be controlled by the United States, not by Denmark. And when they wouldn't go along with it, and with all the money we spend to help them with Russia, and we don't have to spend any money, we could remove all of our soldiers out of Europe. Because as you probably noticed, Europe's a very different place than it was 20 years ago. A lot different, much different. So much different, and they've got to be careful with immigration and energy. If they're not careful with those two things, you're not going to have a Europe anymore. Okay, thank you very much.
As has been well documented, Greenland is an autonomous territory within the Danish kingdom, and Denmark is a NATO ally. And Trump obviously cared little about any of that, as he repeatedly suggested he might take Greenland by force. And while his threats have gone by the wayside in comparison to his other foreign policy endeavours, like, say, new wars in the Middle East that he promised he would never engage in, it appears that European leaders and reporters have not forgotten, as one Danish reporter called to attention the despicable behaviour of the NATO representative Mark Rutte as he caters to the president without ever addressing this matter like they should just move on. The Wall Street Journal report also states how Belgium's Prime Minister warned that Europe risked becoming a, quote, miserable slave to the United States. And at the most recent NATO summit, the head of NATO was grilled by many reporters who said, quote, "You sit next to Donald Trump at moments when he talks about conquering Greenland, talks about lashing out at allies like Spain, things it doesn't seem like the old Mark Rutte would approve of. Does this have any effect on your self-respect when you sit there and say nothing?" Damn.
Rasmus Svaneborg from the Danish news agency.
Yes, hi.
Danish news agency Ritzau. Mark, you sit next to Donald Trump in moments where he talks about conquering Greenland, talks about lashing out at allies like Spain, starting trade wars, things that it doesn't seem like the old Mark Rutte would approve of. Does this have any effect on your self-respect when you sit next to him like that and say nothing?
You know, what I always do is acknowledge when praise is due. And I think we should praise Donald Trump for the fact that NATO is so much stronger. Of course, it has to do with the Russian threat. It has to do with the war in Ukraine. But it very much also has to do with President Trump delivering now what since Eisenhower the United States tried to achieve, equalizing spending between the US and Europe. And it makes Europe stronger. It makes Europe more relevant for the United States as a partner. So that is the transformative character of this summit, of what happened in The Hague, the implementation since The Hague, this summit as a point in time where we take stock. And I think that is extremely important. And when it comes to Greenland, I already explained. We had the meeting in Davos. And I said, I agree with you when it comes to Russia, when it comes to China, gaining access to the High North. But let's do this together. We have NATO for this. Let's work together on this. This is exactly what we are doing.
But at its core, the report of all these leaders gathering in secret to discuss the President of the United States and how to move forward, potentially without them as a key ally, it's extraordinary, right? I mean, under previous presidents, you would think these countries would gather as a means to strengthen the relationship because America meant stability, access, protection, security. Now European leaders are reportedly debating how to get away from American dependence because Trump has turned that dependence into vulnerability.
Post yesterday with respect to Prime Minister Maloney, that Truth Social post with the restraining order.
Oh, I don't know. I think she's a nice person, actually. We've had we had a bad relationship, but it became a little bad because she refused to help us. Again, I didn't put a heavy press on her, but she refused to get involved with the Hormuz Strait, or you could also say just Iran. She refused to get involved. So it soured my relationship with her a little bit. But I like her. I think she's a nice person, actually. But I think she made a mistake. You know, they get a lot of their oil from, we don't get any of it. We have a lot of oil. The United States has more oil than anybody. And when you add Venezuela to it, it's like we have far more oil than anybody. We don't need the straits. We do this because we think it's an important thing to do. But she just wasn't there for us. And I wasn't happy about that. You can imagine, I wasn't happy about that.
And what has never been more evident is how these leaders are trying to cater to the president. The European leaders are reportedly debating how to get away from American dependence because The Guardian reports that NATO leaders are trying to mollify Trump and Trump-proof the current summit. I mean, that phrase alone is humiliating, right? Trump-proof. We're talking about not only a fully grown adult, or some would argue not so much, but the leader of the free world here. The alliance is not simply planning strategy against Russia, China, Iran, or terrorism. They're planning strategy against the volatility of the American president.
Laughed at our country. They thought we were a bunch of fools. They saw a president that couldn't talk, he couldn't walk. It was a disaster. They lost respect for our country, but now they have more respect for our country than they've ever had before. Thank you all very much. We'll see you back. Thank you very much, everybody.
Which is one of the most beautiful in the world. It's one of the biggest, the Abraham Lincoln. And 2 months ago, we had 100, I told this story yesterday, we had 111 missiles shot by the Islamic Republic of Japan. They were shot at the aircraft carrier over a period of about 1 hour. 111 missiles going to a very expensive ship. And every one of those missiles was knocked down.
And one former NATO spokesperson reportedly described success at the summit as getting through it with no angry outbursts from the president or ruffling any feathers so that he would withhold any sort of funding. That is where America stands now with its allies. The bar for a successful NATO summit is Trump not throwing a fit or making up More claims that other leaders were begging for pictures with him. That's not leadership. That's what we call babysitting.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.